Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of sources, pull out those crucial nuggets of knowledge, and really try to make them stick.
Absolutely.
Today, we're plunging into, well, a truly fascinating paradox. You've got a familiar object, the boomerang, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's forged from something incredibly ancient, really majestic, a mammoth tusk.
That's right, a woolly mammoth tusk specifically.
So we're focusing on this one particular mammoth tusk boomerang found in Poland, an artifact that's, well, it's about to have its age dramatically rewritten.
It is. And our sources for this, they come from some really recent cutting-edge research. Sahra Talamo and her colleagues, they published a paper in PLSS 1.
Right.
And they've meticulously revisited the dating, the whole context of this unique piece.
So our mission for you today, listening in, is to unpack these surprising new revelations about the boomerang, what it tells us about early Homo sapiens arriving in Europe.
Yeah, and why its very existence at this revised age might completely, transform your assumptions about life way back in the Ice Age.
Yeah. Exactly. Get ready for some aha moments, I think.
Definitely.
Okay, let's start with the object itself because it is truly remarkable. Just picture it.
Yeah.
A boomerang, roughly 72 centimeters long.
Mm.
So what's that? Almost 2.5 feet.
Pretty substantial.
Gently curved. One end maybe a little more rounded than the other. But here's the kicker. Like we said, carved from solid woolly mammoth tusk.
I mean, just think about that material. Mammoth tusk could be incredibly thick. Female tusks up to maybe 9 centimeters, males even up to 18 centimeters. Dense ivory.
Wow. So the effort involved, I mean, I can barely carve a pumpkin, let alone shape something so precise out of that. It must have been immense.
Absolutely immense. Thinning it down, shaping that curve, yet this ancient craftsperson managed it.
And the details that survive are just mind-blowing. You can still see faint scratches from the mammoth's actual life.
Which is incredible in itself.
Alongside these fine parallel grooves from the human creator. And they even found diagonal marks on the rounded end. Probably for better grip, right?
Seems likely, yeah. And it's smoothed, it's worn from handling, you can tell it was used.
So it wasn't just ceremonial.
No, experiments with a replica showed it flies smoothly, but interestingly, it doesn't return.
Ah, okay. So more like a throwing stick, or like those non-returning boomerangs.
Exactly, similar to some Aboriginal Australian types, like the Queensland-type boomerang. It's a hunting tool, essentially, or perhaps for other tasks.
But it wasn't purely utilitarian either, was it? Because it's marked up.
That's right. Deep, wide incisions, and they found traces of red pigment still in them.
Red pigment. So someone wanted this thing to look cool, basically, to stand out while it was flying through the air.
It seems so. It suggests a symbolic or aesthetic dimension beyond just its function.
And here's another really curious detail. They didn't find any ivory fragments, like leftover bits from carving, at the site itself?
No, none. Which strongly suggests it was made somewhere else and then brought to the Obłazowa Cave.
Which really highlights its special status, doesn't it? Maybe it was traded or carried a long way?
It certainly implies it was valued, perhaps a significant object for the person or group who possessed it.
Okay, so this incredible object, it held a secret for decades, right? A secret about its age.
Exactly. And researchers have now painstakingly uncovered it, and it's a revelation that really does rewrite a chapter of human history.
So how old did they first think it was?
Well, when it was discovered back in the 1990s in Poland's Obłazowa Cave, the initial dating was done in 1996.
Okay.
They took a sample directly from the boomerang itself, and radiocarbon dating placed it at around 18,000 years old.
Which was already pretty old, right? One of the oldest.
Oh, absolutely. Very significant even then. But Sahra Talamo and her team, they started to get suspicious.
Why? What was the problem?
Well, that 18,000-year date, it just didn't seem to align properly with other artifacts found in the exact same geological layer of the cave. Layer 8, they call it.
Okay, so things found right alongside it seems potentially older.
Precisely. Their hypothesis was that the original boomerang sample might have been contaminated, by modern carbon.
How would that happen?
Could be from anything, really. Adhesives used during conservation or restoration work back in the day, perhaps even just handling. Contamination makes things appear artificially younger in radiocarbon dating.
Right, because it introduces newer carbon isotopes.
Exactly. So instead of trying to redate the boomerang itself, which risks damaging it further and might still have contamination issues, the team took a really clever, sophisticated approach.
What did they do?
They decided to date the context They took samples from 13 different animal bones found in that same layer, layer 8.
Okay.
And also one human bone, a thumb bone, actually also from that layer.
So dating the neighbors, basically.
Kind of, yeah. Then they used a statistical method called Bayesian modeling. It's a way to combine multiple dates and other information to build a much more robust chronology for the entire layer.
Right. It sort of averages out potential errors and gives a clearer picture of when that layer was actually occupied, like cross-referencing multiple witnesses instead of relying on one potentially shaky account.
Precisely. A much more reliable timeline.
And the results.
Dramatic. Really dramatic. The new analysis estimates the boomerang is actually around 40,000 years old.
40,000?
Yes. Specifically, the model puts it between 42,290 and 39,280 calibrated years before present, with a high degree of probability.
That's more than double the original estimate.
It's a huge leap back in time.
Wow. And what about that human thumb bone? Did that date match up?
Well, the thumb bone gave a date of around 31,000 years before present. But importantly, the collagen quality wasn't ideal.
Ah, so less reliable.
Yes. The CN ratio, which measures collagen purity, was a bit off. So they consider that 31,000 years a minimum age, and it wasn't actually included in the main Bayesian model for the layer's occupation age. DNA analysis showed it was modern human Homo sapiens, but yeah, the date itself is treated cautiously.
Okay, but the key takeaway is the boomerang itself and the layer it was in is firmly pushed back to around 40,000 years ago.
That's the crucial finding, yes.
So what's the biggest historical myth this new date just completely shatters about Ice Age Europe? Because this isn't just like tweaking a number. This changes the story.
It really does. That's where it gets truly fascinating. The prevailing view for a long time was that Central and Northern Europe were largely, well, deserted for thousands of years after Neanderthals disappeared around 35,000 years ago.
Why was that the thinking?
Primarily because of climate. There was a significant climatic deterioration. The idea was it made the region basically uninhabitable, a sort of prehistoric post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Grim picture.
Very. But the new dating from Obłazowa Cave completely overturns that. It shows that Homo sapiens were living in this cave for maybe 3,500 years during this very challenging climatic period.
So they weren't just avoiding the area, they were living there, adapting.
Exactly. They survived through phases of relative warmth, sure, but also through periods of deeper cold. It shows incredible resilience, resilience in the face of environmental variability.
And behavioral flexibility, too, the paper says.
Yes. It directly challenges that old assumption that these early modern human groups, the Argnations, only moved into these areas or could only survive there during the warmer spells, the interstadials.
They were tougher, more adaptable than we thought.
It certainly seems so. And if you look at other evidence, like the stable isotope analysis from that thumb bone again, with caution due to the sample quality, it hinted at quite a diverse diet.
What does that suggest?
It suggests they were really good at adapting to whatever resources were available seasonally. Maybe even freshwater fish were part of the diet. It paints a picture of people who were local to the area, deeply familiar with it, not just migrants passing through when times were good.
Right, which brings us back to the boomerang itself. It almost sounds contradictory to the usual Ice Age image. People aren't just surviving, they seem to be, well, maybe not thriving in the modern sense, doing well enough.
That's a key point.
What's the indicator for that? Is it the boomerang itself?
I think it is. The fact that people living in this supposedly harsh environment were investing the time and considerable effort needed to make something like a mammoth ivory boomerang. I mean, it's complex, it's labor-intensive, frankly. It's kind of inconvenient to make compared to a simple wooden throwing stick.
Yeah, you wouldn't bother if you were just scraping by, fighting for every calorie.
Exactly. It shows they had the resources, the time, and perhaps the social stability to invest in things beyond pure survival. Things that involved skill, maybe symbolism, aesthetics.
Like the red pigment.
Like the red pigment, precisely. It suggests a level of cultural richness and security that maybe we underestimated for this period and region.
And the context of the find itself adds another layer, doesn't it? You mentioned it wasn't just lying around anywhere.
No, not at all. This is what truly captures the imagination. It was found near a circle of boulders, granite, and quartzite, right in the center of the main cave chamber.
A circle of boulders. Were they natural?
Doesn't seem like it. The researchers note they appear to have been transported from the nearby river and intentionally placed.
Wow. So a deliberate structure of some kind.
It certainly suggests an organized use of space, maybe for a specific activity or purpose. It wasn't just random cave floor debris.
And it wasn't alone there, right? There were other interesting things found nearby.
That's right. Found close by were tools made from antlers, some pendants made from Arctic fox teeth.
Fox teeth pendants. Cool.
A bone bead, and that human thumb bone we discussed earlier.
So the boomerang, the human bone, the pendants, the bead, all clustered near this boulder circle.
Yes. And that spatial association, the paper suggests, points towards a close relationship between the boomerang and the human fossil. Maybe some kind of deliberate deposition putting them there together. Or maybe a functional connection relating to whatever happened at that spot.
It sounds almost ritualistic.
Archaeologists do speculate about that. Could there have been some kind of ritual, maybe shamanistic practice involved? Some have even drawn parallels, though it's highly speculative, to certain rock art depictions elsewhere that show human hands with missing digits, given the lone thumb bone found here.
Huh. That's fascinating and speculative. But it definitely points to a deeper meaning.
It strongly suggests we're looking at more than just a lost tool. It ties into this broader idea of Homo sapiens' enhanced symbolic capacity during this period, the early Aurignacian.
Right, this wasn't just about better tools. It was also about art, meaning.
Exactly. We see an explosion of artistic expression then. It goes beyond just body ornaments like beads and pendants. We start seeing three-dimensional figurines like the famous Venus figures, engraved blocks, and tools that are clearly made with an eye for aesthetics, not just function.
And the Obłazowa boomerang fits right into that picture.
Perfectly, with its careful shaping, the polish from use, and especially those red pigment decorations. It clearly wasn't purely utilitarian. It reflects, as the researchers put it, a unique choice by the group at Obłazowa Cave, maybe highlighting an emerging regional artistic identity or tradition.
So that naturally makes you wonder, was this Polish boomerang a one-off, something totally unique to this group? Or was it part of a bigger, maybe even global story of this kind of technology?
That's a great question. If we zoom out from Obłazowa Cave in Europe for a moment, boomerangs, or at least boomerang-like throwing sticks, are actually, well, they're a frequent solution to the same basic problem, how to hit things with a stick from a distance.
Right. Seems like a pretty universal idea.
And we find evidence on at least 3 continents, Africa, Australia, and Europe. This strongly suggests they were invented independently in different places at different times, rather than the idea spreading from a single origin point.
Okay. So where else do we find ancient ones?
Well, the oldest known wooden boomerang, famously, comes from Australia. Wiry Swamp. That one's dated to around 10,000, maybe 9,000 years ago.
Still incredibly old, but much younger than this Obłazowa one.
Much younger, yes. In Europe, besides Obłazowa, there are other finds, though maybe not quite the same. There's a much older, like 300,000-year-old wooden throwing stick from Schöningen in Germany. But it's debated if it's a true boomerang.
More like a sharpened stick.
Potentially, yeah. There's a mammoth bone fragment from Austria that might be part of one, a wooden one from Denmark dated to the Mesolithic around 7,000 years ago, and even an Iron Age returning boomerang from the Netherlands only about 300 BC.
So a long history in Europe too, but this Obłazowa one is exceptionally old and made of ivory.
Exceptionally old, yes. And the ivory makes it very unusual. We also see depictions in North African rock art, and actual examples turn up in ancient Egyptian tombs. King Tut had a whole collection of boomerangs and throwing sticks.
Tutankhamun had boomerangs.
Wow. Yep. Made of various materials. It just shows how versatile and widespread these types of tools were. Used for hunting, sure, but maybe also for things like butchering, digging, scraping hides. Some cultures even use similar curved sticks as musical instruments.
Clapping sticks, that sort of thing.
Exactly. So it underlines this common thread of human ingenuity and resourcefulness, finding clever uses for a curved stick across vast distances and cultures.
What an absolutely incredible journey into the past. Just seeing how this single artifact, this mammoth tusk boomerang, when re-examined with modern science, has fundamentally reshaped our understanding of a really crucial period in human history.
It really has. The Obłazowa boomerang now stands as, well, one of Europe's oldest known complex tools. It shows remarkable technological skill and symbolic innovation by these very early Homo sapiens groups in Europe.
And it paints such a different picture of their lives.
A completely different picture. One of resilient human groups, not just surviving in Ice Age Central Europe, but actively adapting, thriving even, creating art, developing unique traditions, all in the face of those harsh environmental challenges. It really challenges those older notions of an empty, desolate landscape.
Right. No more prehistoric post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Not quite, no. And, the method itself is important too. The careful, multidisciplinary approach to dating this artifact, using Bayesian modeling on associated finds, it's a great reminder of how new scientific techniques can literally rewrite history books.
Absolutely. It makes you wonder what else might be waiting for a second look in museum collections.
Always a possibility.
So let's leave our listeners with a final thought. Considering the immense effort, the skill, the artistry that went into this single tool, this boomerang decorated with red pigment, possibly carried over long distances, maybe even placed deliberately near human remains, what does that tell you personally about the values, the ingenuity, and maybe even the spiritual lives of these ancient Ice Age communities 40,000 years ago?
It suggests a depth and complexity we're only just beginning to fully appreciate.